What's happening, people? Back with another reaction, back with some Rolling Stones for the first time. And indeed, once I began going through the Beatles about a month ago, it felt inevitable, even necessary, to start going through the Rolling Stones as well. Probably in tandem with the Beatles. I don't know if I'll always do them on the same day, but when I think of one, I think of the other. And in that regard, I do believe these are two of the most famous and celebrated bands of all time. Certainly, I knew about both of them growing up. Now, in both cases, I had a very limited and eclectic experience with their music, meaning, and as I mentioned in the Beatles deep dive, when I was growing up as a kid in the 80s, I was born in 1980 in case you're new to the channel, my parents listened to a lot of the early Beatles stuff, and though I'm already finding out that they listened to a selection of the Beatles' early songs, but yes, clearly not all of them, because the first two songs I've listened to or reacted to from the Beatles I was not familiar with, but they didn't listen to as much Stones. Now, I remember very clearly my dad listening to Under My Thumb when I was growing up. I definitely heard that song before. I don't remember exactly where, but before I was a teenager, I definitely had heard Paint It Black, and I was instantly like, oh my god, that's an incredible tune. I love that song. And then as I got a little bit older, I heard a couple other tunes, and, Can't Get No Satisfaction. I think it's just called Satisfaction. Maybe I'm wrong. In fact, it's probably on a CD we're about to listen to. Oh, it is. I Can't Get No, parenthetically, and then Satisfaction. But yeah, I had a friend who was kind of into older music when I was going through high school in the 90s, and I remember he played for me the Rolling Stones' Mother's Little Helper. And I instantly was like, oh my god, that's incredible. I like that just about as much as Paint It Black. So the point is, I know a few of the Rolling Stones songs, but I don't know their larger catalog, and there's maybe even one or two songs I know by name. Like, what is it, Sympathy for the Devil? I'm aware of that song by name, but I don't think I've ever heard it. So yes, again, I listen to a lot of music, I have a lot of interest in different genres, and I'm up to hear anything, but there are some notable oversights in my musical history, and hearing the larger Stones catalog is one of them. But we're here to rectify that, and again, we're going to start with a compilation, the very best of the Rolling Stones, and specifically with Mother's Little Helper, because it has long been essentially in a two-way tie for my favorite Stones song, along with Paint It Black. And more on the song itself in a moment, but I will say Vera has also sent Sticky Fingers, Tattoo You, and Black and Blue, so I have all of those albums to go through as well. In any case, as I said, I wanted to start with Mother's Little Helper because I absolutely love it, just the keyboard work, the vocals, the vibe of the tune, which is a bit dark and gritty, the subject matter, which is itself quite dark indeed. It deals with addiction and the spiraling of addictive behavior to the point where you're not only ruining your health and maybe your family and social life, but eventually you can actually kill yourself. And in that regard, it's sort of, and this obviously came much, much before the film I'm about to mention, but I remember when I saw the film Requiem for a Dream, which is a relentlessly depressing movie, and if you haven't seen it, I don't even know if I can recommend it to you, though I do think it is a well-done film. In any case, there's one plot line in that movie where the whole time I'm watching it, I'm thinking, like, this is the song Mother's Little Helper in cinematic form. In any case, sonically I love the tune, vocally I love the tune, and in terms of atmosphere, I think it's just fantastic. Now, I haven't heard it in a little bit, like, overall. I did listen to a little snippet in the last couple days because, I knew I was going to be reacting to this, but ultimately the point is, this is a song that I've known for a very long time, and I am intensely fond of. I will say the opening line, what a drag it is getting older, which relates to the theme or the narrative that unfolds in the song, I feel that. Again, I'm 45, I'm sort of like well into middle age now, and I definitely feel that, which I imagine that feeling will not lessen over time. But yeah, the truer lines were ever spoken than the opening line of this song. In any case, let's kick off the Rolling Stones journey with Mother's Little Helper, taken from the very best of the Rolling Stones 1964 to 1971 compilation.
What a drag it is getting old. busy day. Doctor, please, some more of these outside the door. She took for more. What a drag it is getting old. Men just aren't the same today. I hear every mother say they just don't appreciate that you get tired. They're so hard to satisfy. You can tranquilize your man. So go running for the shelter of a mother's little helper and follow you through the night. Help to minimize your flight. Doctor, please, some more of these outside the door. She took for more. What a drag it is getting old. Life's just much too hard today. I hear every mother say the pursuit of happiness just seems a bore. And if you take more of those, you will get an overdose. No more running for the shelter of a mother's little helper. They just helped you on your way through your busy dying day.
Oh, it's perfection. It's literally perfection in every respect. I love the sonics, that little, I don't know if there's an effect on the guitar, but that guitar line, it just has this a bit wicked sound to it. The bass, my God, the bass, especially right after the flourish of the chorus, it does this like back and forth, really heavy and electric bass, what's the right word, alternation, and I really love that. It has this depth, it's got this like electric energy to it. I enjoy the little drum flourishes along the way. I think Mick Jagger sounds great on the vocals, and he hits the increasingly desperate feeling of this story that plays out. Now again, it references chemical dependence, it references like, you know, self-medication to the point of addiction and, you know, the pharmaceutical industry, but it also, I think, is certainly initially sympathetic to why this mother is seeking some sort of refuge or solace. It's like, look, getting old is a drag, and, you know, it's hard to have energy to get yourself through the day, and, you know, you got to take care of the kids, and you got to cook your husband dinner, and so, you know, maybe if you cut some corners, and, you know, maybe if you get something that kind of tranquilizes your mind a little bit, it's easier to get through the day. And you know what, maybe if you don't cook dinner one night, maybe you just get a frozen meal, and maybe you make things a bit easier on yourself. Maybe that's understandable. And then, oh, you know, like, can I get this prescription refilled? Like, please, I need some more of these. And the idea of kind of, you know, making a personal appeal, and okay, the doctor signs the letter, and she immediately gets outside the door, and boop, she's taken 4 of them, which are probably supposed to last her, you know, a couple weeks or something like that. And so you just see this line of descent, even if at every point along the way you understand a little bit why she is where she is. And again, as someone in middle age, I certainly understand that getting older is definitely a drag. And so, and of course there's layers that are like specific to, you know, married women and people with children, and, you know, sort of making sure your spouse is taken care of and so on. But yes, the idea that it's maybe a well-meaning woman who genuinely maybe needed some form of relief at the beginning of the song, it's understandable, and yet she ends up being a full-blown addict, you know, kind of destroying her family life, her health, and eventually getting through her dying day. You know, the day of her death arrives, and it's like no more running for the shelter of the mother's little helper, because you can't take any more pills if you're dead. So yeah, it's just a wicked song in all respects, but I think, again, perfectly crafted sonically and lyrically, and again, I think the vocals fit it. So again, it's always been one of my favorite songs from them, which again, I'm working from a set of like 4 or 5 songs of theirs that I know, though as I also said, Painted Black is like the same. They're basically both 1A. Maybe on like one day one is 1A and one is 1B, but they're both fantastic. So the plan here is when I come back to the Stones the next time, I am going to do Paint It Black, and then I'll go through the remainder of this very best of compilation, which admittedly is only from 64 to 71, and I'm aware they've like hit their 60th anniversary and they are still active on some level. I don't know if they're touring, but yes, I know they have continued to be around, and Keith Richards is famously like the Rasputin of the music world. He just doesn't die, and I know there were a lot of like tabloid stories about that and so on. Incidentally, I share a birthday with Mr. Richards, December 18th. But yes, ultimately their longevity is incredible, and I guess that's one of the major contrasts to the Beatles, who were only around, I believe, for roughly a 10-year period. And then again, you have the Stones, who've been around for like more than 60 years. So either way, we'll go through the rest of this, then we'll hit these albums. I'm looking forward to it all. Let me know what you think of this one. I'll see you next time. Peace.